Hello, all. I still had another minute, but I have this thing where I'm watching the countdown and I just can't stand it. It literally starts counting down the seconds, and I can't do it. I have to come on, even if it's just a minute late, minute early. So I'll just give it a couple minutes, let people realize I'm here because I forgot to reschedule this like I normally do. So I'll just mention what we learned about last week. Um, So last week we did the contagion of aberration, which pretty much was about what the title said. It pretty much is saying that aberrations can be contagious. Now, what we found interesting last week was things that he said, like, I have it underlined. One never observes the forced individual doing a job well. This was last chapter, Cricket. Hi. You know, forced groups are invariably less efficient than free groups. I mean, that right there, it isn't that he should have done what he wrote. He knew this, but ran Scientology the way he did anyway. That's what I take away from it. Hi, Susan. Because he knows forcing people to work, they're not going to do a good job. He didn't care. That wasn't the point. Wait until you watch my new video. I'm done with the video. I just haven't put it up yet because I have to get some links in the description. But I just did a video about LRH and black magic in Scientology. It's very interesting. He was way more into black magic than we even thought. So it's just a short video. I'm going to try to do a video series of under 15-minute videos for new people. We're constantly getting new people that haven't done the deep dives that some of us have done or been watching as long as we have. So, especially when we go vertical, we're getting brand new people that don't know anything about Scientology. And, everything I learned was from a year's worth of binge watching on Aaron's channel and then other people. So, I'm trying to make a series of information videos that people might be interested in. I know I had it down last night too, and everybody was saying it. I know it needs cut. That's why I colored it yesterday, so all my dirty blonde is gone. So I just need to get some layers in it, and then I'll probably wear it down more. Is it usually this summer? It's too hot, but I literally have been wearing a ponytail for like 10 years because I never went anywhere. So what was the point? So. Okay, let's dive into this. All right, switching glasses again. The computer is just too far away for my regular glasses to work, so I have to switch to readers. All right, keying in the Engram. Now, if you remember, and he's probably going to say this anyway, but I'm just going to say it. So we know, for people that haven't listened to every chapter, an Engram is what he calls a memory of a physical or emotional abuse. So it's always bad. And keying in really just means re-stimulate. So when you get re-stimulated, that engram comes back. He's probably going to explain that. Let's see how long. I didn't even see how long this was. I almost missed this today, you guys. At 2:30, I looked at the clock and I was like, oh my God. We can do the whole chapter. It's only 9. Yeah, well, yeah, we can do the whole chapter. All right. I'll read fast. The single source of inorganic mental illness and organic psychosomatic illness is the reactive engram bank. The reactive mind impinges these engrams upon the analytical mind and the organism whenever they are restimulated after being keyed in. In English, that's the subconscious impinges the engrams upon your regular brain. That's the analytical mind. And the organism whenever they are restimulated after being keyed in. So he is saying re-stimulate. So the key in is a smell or a sight or a sound, and then it gets re-stimulated. So that's what he means by keying in. There are many known incidents in a lifetime which apparently have a profound influence upon the happiness and mental condition of the individual. The individual remembers these and to them attributes his troubles. In a measure, he is right. He is at least looking back at incidents which are held in place by engrams. He does not see the engrams. In fact, unless he is acquainted with Dianetics, he does not know the engrams are there. And even then, he will not know their contents until he has undergone therapy. The fact that he's using therapy. All he is doing is taking something that's normal, like a memory, a bad memory, that causes maybe some depression or anxiety or mental illness, and giving it all these names that he made up, engrams and Keaton, and well, but you know what I mean. He's taking something that we already know, basically, that all of us know. All of us know we have bad memories. All of us know we call it triggered now. He's calling it keyed in. I think the other word for that is trigger. So we all know that things can trigger a bad memory or a bad part of our life. A sound, a sight, a word, a smell can bring back good and bad memories. He never talks about good memories, only bad. Hi, Cinderella. So that's kind of what he's doing. He's making himself sound like he knows this big, huge new thing about your mental and physical illness, when really it's just all basic knowledge. He just wants to sound like he's the expert on this, or that he's found this new thing that scientists and doctors don't know. It can be demonstrated with ease that any moment of conscious level unhappiness which contained great stress or emotion was not guilty of the charge of causing aberration and psychosomatic illness. These moments, of course, played a role in the matter. They were key-ins, or triggers. The process of keying in an engram is not very complex. Engram 105, let us say, was a moment of unconsciousness when the prenatal child was struck via mother by father. The father, aware or not of the child, uttered the words, "God damn you, you filthy whore, you're no good." Damn. This engram lay where it was impressed, in the reactive bank. Now, it could lie there for 70 years and never become keyed in. It contains a headache and a falling body, and the grating of teeth, and the intestinal sounds of the mother. And any of these sounds post-birth may be present in large quantities without keying in this engram. He's making up new words for other people's ideas as usual. Yeah, exactly. He's taking something that all of humankind know by 1950 and making this whole new thing that only he knows about. That's what Dianetics is about, and Scientology. It's about the tech, and it'll help you be a better person. It'll help the able be more able. Yeah. Because I don't believe I can't say that for sure. But I don't believe that an unborn child would have an engram of everything like that. I think there's a possibility, because we do know playing classical music and stuff seems to help the babies. I don't know how much of a study's been done on that, but and I could understand if there was a lot of stress and a lot of arguing. That could, they can hear at a certain point. One day, however, the father becomes exasperated at the child. The child is tired and feverish, which is to say that his analytical mind may not be at its highest level of activity. And the father has a certain set of engrams which he dramatizes, and one of these engrams is the above incident. And the father reaches out and slaps the child and says, "God damn you, you're no good." The child cries. That night he has a headache and is much worse physically. and he feels both an intense hatred and a fear of his father. The engram has keyed in. Now, the sound of a falling body or grating teeth or any trace of anger of any kind in the father's voice will make the child nervous. His physical health will suffer. He will begin to have headaches. I agree with that, to some extent. I mean, you're going to have those reactions with an abusive father, regardless of what engram he's trying to use. I mean, the child's going to be nervous. He might be physically ill because he's so upset. I mean, it's just, we already know these things. If we take this child who has now become an adult and rake back over his past, we shall discover, though it may not, or sorry, this is in parentheses, though it may be occluded, a lock like the above key-in. And now not only the key-in, we may discover 100, 1,000 such locks just on this one subject. One would say, unless he knew Dianetics, that this child was ruined postnatally by being beaten by the father, and one might attempt to bring the patient's mind back into better condition by removing these locks. Sounds like going to therapy. There are literally thousands, tens of thousands of locks in the average life. To take all of these locks away would be a task for Hercules. Every engram a person has, if it has been keyed in, may have its hundreds of locks. If conditioning existed as a mechanism of pain and stress, mankind would be in a very bad condition. Fortunately, conditioning does not so exist. It appears to exist, but the appearance is not the fact. One would think that if a child were daily thrust around and reviled, he would eventually become conditioned into a belief that this was the way life was and that he had better turn against it. That's kind of normal. I mean, without all his weird words, that's kind of normal. Conditioning does not, however, exist. Pavlov may have been able to drive dogs mad by repeated experiments. Well, I hope he didn't really do that. Russian physiology, I can't say that. I can't say it. Physiologist noted for behavioral experiments on dogs. I hope he wasn't mean. The dogs might be trained to do this or that, but it was not conditioning. The dogs went mad because they were given engrams. If and when they did go mad, a series of such experiments, properly conducted and observed, proves this contention. Scooter Mom, words are hard. They are. The boy who was daily told he was no good and who apparently went into a decline solely because of that, declined only because of the engram. And this is where I think we all disagree. Let's see, where did he say that? Declined only because of the engram. Now, normally we would say declined because of the abuse, the memories, being in that environment constantly, and he's turning all of that into engram. So this is a happy fact. Okay, why? Why is this a happy fact? The engram may take a while to locate, a few hours, but when it is alleviated or refiled in the standard memory banks, everything which had locked on to it also refiles. Alrighty, he's gonna have to explain that one to me. Cricket. Oh, he would ring a bell before feeding them, and they would salivate. Eventually, they would start to salivate anytime the bell was rung, whether they were eating or not. I've heard about that. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I've heard of that. So I've probably heard about that experiment sometime in the past. I just don't know much about the all of it. People trying to help others with their aberrations who did not know about engrams were, of course, operating with 2.9 strikes against any success. In the first place, the locks themselves may vanish down into the reactive bank. I will come back to that, Adam. Vanish down into the reactive bank. Thus, we get a patient who says, "Oh, my father wasn't so bad. He was a pretty good guy." And we discovered, and the patient discovers, when an engram is sprung, that father was customarily to be found dramatizing. What the patient knows about his past before engrams are sprung is not worth cataloging. Now, if you don't remember, I think what he means there is the dramatization is when you take on a personality from one of your own engrams, and what earlier on in the book, it just really meant if you were abused, you become an abuser because you're being like that person that caused engrams in you, which we all know is somewhat normal. Abusers very much become abusers. Uh, what I said that already. In another case, we may find a patient saying, "Oh, I had a terrible childhood, a terrible childhood. I was beaten seriously." And we discover when we get the engrams refiled that the parents of this patient never laid a hand on him in punishment or wrath in his entire life. I'm confused by that statement. We discover when we get the engrams refiled. So he's saying if you refile the engram, you forget you were ever abused. That's what he said there. And we discover when we get the engrams refiled that the parents of this patient never laid a hand on him in punishment or wrath his entire life. I'm not sure about that statement. We'll see if he goes on. An engram may coast along without being keyed in for decades. One of the most remarkable types of case is one which spent an entire youth without displaying any aberration. Then suddenly, at the age of 26, we discover him to be so aberrated so suddenly that it appears he must have been hexed. Perhaps most of his engrams were concerned with the action of getting married and having children. He has never been married before. The first time he is weary or ill and realizes he has a wife on his hands, the first engram keys in. Then the dwindling spiral begins to go to work. This one shuts down the analyzer enough so that the others can be keyed in, and finally we may discover him in an institution. Dang. But I mean, that happens, and you know, there are times people don't show mental illness until later in life, and that could be for many reasons. A young girl who has been happy and carefree to the age of 13 and then suddenly goes into a decline has not that moment received an engram. She has had an engram keyed in. So he's saying it's not a new engram, it's just being triggered. Okay. This key in may have required nothing more than the discovery that she was bleeding, she was having her period. Dude has to be like, say it in like the most in your face words, I swear. Discovery that she is having her period. She has an emotional engram about this. She becomes frantic. The other engrams, as the days follow, may swing into position to impinge upon her, and so she becomes ill. She could be ill because of the hormones that you have to go through. I got to use my mouth spray. Hang on. Okay, I'm back. Biotin, I love it. All right, so she becomes ill. The first. Let me see if I want to read this paragraph. Hold on. I'm going to read it, but I'm going to change some of the words. And I'm going to put a trigger warning on this video. So, trigger warning. The first sexual experience may be one which keys in an engram. This is so standard that sex has gotten a rather bad name for itself here and there as being an aberrated factor all by itself. Sex is not and never has been aberrative. Physical pain and emotion which incidentally contain sex as a subject are the aberrative factors. It may be that the patient is urgent in her insistence that her father ard her when she was 9, and that this is the cause of all her misery. Large numbers of insane patients claim this. Well, duh. Large numbers, oh, I said that. And it is perfectly true. Father did ard her, but it happened she was only 9 days beyond conception at the time. Okay, I'm not reading this paragraph. All I'm going to say is he says the act could be expected to give a child an engram, which will have its content, the act, and everything that was said. Drug hypnosis is dangerous when one is trying to treat psychotics, and has been mentioned. And there are other reasons it is dangerous. Any operation under anesthetic or any drugging of a patient may bring about the keying in of engrams. Here is the analyzer shutdown. There is the reactive bank open to be stirred by any comment made by the people around the drugged subject. Hypnotism itself is a condition in which engrams may be keyed in, which have never before been restimulated. The glassy-eyed stare of the person who has been too often hypnotized. The lack of will seen in people too often hypnotized. The dependence of the subject upon the hypnotic operator. All these things stem from the keying in of engrams. Anytime the body is rendered unconscious without physical pain, no matter how light the degree of unconsciousness is, even if it is only the lightness of weariness, an engram may be keyed in. And when unconsciousness is complicated by new physical pain, a new engram is formed, which may gather up with it an entire bundle of old engrams not hitherto keyed in. Such a late engram would be a cross engram, in that it crosses chains of engrams. And if such an engram resulted in a loss of sanity, it would be called a break engram. So now we have a break engram now. A cross engram and a break engram. All right. There are some aspects to various drug unconsciousnesses which have been very perplexing in the past. Psychotic women often maintain, after they are awakened from a drug sleep, and sometimes a hypnotic sleep, that they have been ard. Men occasionally maintain that the operator has tried to perform an act upon them while they were drugged. Although it occasionally occurs that people are ard after being drugged, well, we know who did that. I wonder if he learned it from this book. The largest number of such assertions are merely an aspect of the keyed-in mechanism. Almost any child has been put through the prenatal discomfort of the parents being together intimately. Often there was violent emotion rather than passion present. Such an engram may stay out of circuit for years until drugged unconsciousness or some such things keys it in. The patient goes to sleep without a keyed-in engram. He wakes up with one. He tries to justify the strange sensations he has, and engrams are timeless things unless they are arranged properly on the time track, and comes out with the solution that he must have been arbed. Is he trying to say he thinks he's been arbed, but he's actually remembering something? Is that what he just said there? Okay. I guess that's what he means. So it didn't really happen, but because, yep, that's what I thought he just said. Yeah. uh okay. Childhood R's are very seldom the responsible cause in sexual aberration. They are the key in. Well, that means that's common knowledge. If something like that happened to you as a child, it's going to mess you up. One looks at the conscious level locks and sees sadness, mental anguish, and misfortune. Some of the experience there seems to be so terrible that it must certainly cause aberration, but it does not. Man is a tough, resilient creature. These conscious level experiences are at best only guideposts leading toward the actual seat of trouble, and that is not known in any detailed way to the individual. Experience our best guideposts. Okay. The engram is never computed. An example of this on a lightly aberrated level can be found in a child's punishment. If one examines a childhood where punishment has been corporal and frequent, he begins to understand the utter futility of the pain drive theory. Punishment actually and literally and emphatically does no good of any kind whatsoever, but accomplishes quite the reverse, since it occasions a reactive revolt against the punishment source, and is likely to cause not only a disintegration of a mind, but also a continual bedevilment of the punishment source. The whole time I'm reading that, I'm thinking about the punishment in Scientology, the RPF. So he's saying that is, if punishment is frequent and corporal, he understands the futility of the pain drive theory. So it ceases to work. And punishment does no good of any kind whatsoever. I'm underlining that one. No good of any kind whatsoever, but accomplishes the reverse. Again, he knew exactly what he was doing, exactly that it was wrong and what would come of it. But he did it anyway. That's what gets me. I'm not thinking anymore of, he should have listened to what he wrote down. He did. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't care. And there's at the end of the Black Magic video, I'll try to get it up today. There's a statement in there that pretty much shows you all about the very last statement that I say is something that he said. Man reacts to fight sources of pain. When he stops fighting them, he is mentally broken and of little use to anyone, much less himself. the RPF for years, what do you think it's going to do to somebody? He wants them to be broken. It can be more controlled that way. We take a case of a boy who was beaten with a hairbrush every time he was bad. In researching this case, the most searching inquiry fails to reveal any vivid recall of why he was punished, but only that he was punished. The progress of the event would go something like this: activity, more or less rational, fright at threatened punishment, punishment, sorrow over punishment, renewed activity. The mechanics of the case showed the person to have been engaged on some activity which, whether others would consider it so or not, was nevertheless survival activity to him, giving him either pleasure or actual gains, or even the assertion that he could and would survive. The moment punishment is threatened, old punishments go into restimulation as minor engrams, resting usually on major engrams. This shuts down the analytical power to some extent, and the recording is now being done on a reactive level. The punishment takes place, submerging analytical awareness so that the punishment records in the engram bank only. The sorrow following is still in the period of analytical shutdown. The analyzer gradually turns on, full awareness returns, and then activity on an analytical plane can be resumed. All corporal punishment runs this gamut, and all other punishments are, at best, locks, following the same pattern with only the complete shutdown resulting from pain missing. LRH's engrams made him punish people. His engrams made him do it. I guess you could say that. But he should know how to get rid of those engrams. What I just read here, again, because we delved into how he talked about shutting down part of a person's mind by re-stimulating their trauma all day long. He's saying almost the same thing here. He's saying that the moment punishment is threatened, old punishments go into re-stimulation, and then the analytical power shuts down, and the part of the person's mind shuts down. And so, because of the punishment all the time, and all the time in the past, they're going to be more easily controlled because they're not thinking for themselves anymore. Their analytical power has shut off because of the fear and the re-stimulation of all of this trauma that was most likely caused in Scientology in the first place, or being raised by Scientologists. We like Jamie Mustard and his brother and what they went through. So even as babies and toddlers, they were, if you want to say it like LRH, were given many engrams. If the analyzer wants this data for computation, it is not available. There is a reaction in the reactive mind when the matter is approached, but there are 5 courses the reactive mind can take with this data, and there is no guarantee and no method between land and sky of knowing what course the reactive mind will take with the data except knowing the full engram bank. And if that is known, the person could be cleared with a few more hours' work and would need no punishment. These 5 ways of handling data make corporal punishment an unstable and unreliable thing. A ratio exists which can be tested and proven in any man's experience. A man is evil in the direct ratio that destructiveness has been leveled against him. I would disagree. Only to the point of there are evil people out there that weren't abused or treated badly. But we also do know those that are treated badly can turn into evil people. So 50% I'll give them. An individual, including those individuals society is liable to forget as individuals, children, reacts against the punishment source, whether that source be parents or government or your religion. Anything which sets itself forward against an individual as a punishment source will be considered in greater or lesser degree, as it is in proportion to benefits, as a target for the reactions of the individual. So how does that mean people in Scientology or Sea Org? Anything that sets forward against the individual, anything that is the punishment source. All of these pseudo research with no citations offered, it's crazy making. Yeah, I know. Because we're trying to read and think all around. He goes all the way around this simple fact that we all already know. You know, we know all of this. We know if someone is punished badly, that source is going to be a target of their reaction. They're going to react to it. We already know that. And he's, again, laying out everything he did in Scientology, but people aren't seeing it. They're thinking they're going in there to get better, get rid of this stuff, and yet they find themselves in the same situation. But they're not allowed to think for themselves, and they're not allowed to question it because you'll get in trouble. Hence the E-meter. So he knows that with inventing the RPF and creating a culture of abuse, that eventually that person, when they do think for themselves or figure it out, Scientology is going to be the source of their grievance, and they're going to want to run away and get away from it or hate it. They might stay in, but they'll hate every minute of it. So he it's like he never even tried to create a welcoming environment. He never even tried to create a place of self-help. That he never cared. He took a lot from psychology and renamed things. Also from New Age, spiritualism, occultism, and Buddhism. He did. Aha, Ben. Yeah. And we were saying that earlier. He just takes what normal human behavior, what you would expect, that psychologists already know, and really most humanity knows. If you're punished a lot by a source, you're going to hate and turn against that source. Oh, it's my fault, Ben. Usually I put this out a few days early, and I didn't. I looked at the clock at 2:30. I usually set an alarm for a couple hours early. I was literally just sitting here playing a game on my phone and listening to Ancient Aliens. And I looked up and it was 2:30. I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't put it on the board until like 10 minutes to 3. So there was no notification. No, it's always YouTube's fault or Aaron's fault. But yeah. So as we were saying, you know, he takes this whole thing is just a renaming and reshaping of normal human behavior. But he makes it sound like he's an expert and he's created this new thing that's going to help you. Well, this one doesn't say it. The Modern Science of Man. This is an older book. All right, let's keep going. Where were we? So we just talked about the punishment source will be considered in greater or lesser degree as a target for the reactions of the individual, which makes common sense. The little accidental milk glass upsets of children, that noise which just accidentally occurs on the porch where the children are playing, that little accidental ruination of Papa's hat or Mama's rug, these are often cold, calculative, reactive mind actions against pain sources. Oh, he's saying they did it on purpose? The analytical mind may temporize, and what is that? To effect a compromise or negotiate. Okay. The analytical mind may temporize about love and affection and the need of 3 square meals. The reactive mind runs off the lessons it has learned and devil take the meals. If one turned an idiot loose on an adding machine and let him audit the company books and let him prevent the auditor from touching equipment and data, which has to be his if any answers will be right, one would get very little in the way of correct answers. And if one kept feeding the idiot and made him fat and powerful, the firm would sooner or later go to ruin. I have a thought on that. The reactive mind is the idiot, the auditor is I, and the firm is the organism. Punishment feeds the idiot. Ugh. So you don't have to look up my nose. Oh, Indigo, thank you. Well, I've said too, there's no way I could have read this by myself. I wouldn't have been able to do it either. Being able to at least know someone's listening and I have to keep going. And the discussion that we have, it's so helpful. Even to me. I wanted to understand. We've only gotten this far. I don't think we're quite maybe halfway. And we've already broken down what LRH, how he created Scientology, why he did it, why people became victims of it because they were looking, we've already figured a lot of it out. Now we're just breaking down the details. But we know this back engineering. I'm just saying it's galling for him to present it with no case studies or citations. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing because we're now in the modern age knowing a lot more about psychology and psychotherapy and all of that. This was 1950. So there wasn't a lot of places for people to go and find out if this was real or not. And no, he didn't do all of the scientific data, the test. He never says, I did this testing. He always says it in a vague way. The testing was done, da 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 da. So he does quote studies, but if they did happen, they were small and insignificant, or probably didn't come out with the answers he did. If you know a lot about the impact of World War II and New Age spiritualism leading into the 60s, it's actually not that surprising that Hubbard's book became so popular, The Sociology Behind the Movement. Exactly. There were a lot of people coming out of World War II with PTSD, didn't know what it was. They called it shell shock, and it was looked down upon, and you weren't allowed to talk about it. So, yeah, we probably had a lot of people in the 50s and 60s that went through that war or were relatives of soldiers and didn't know how to handle it and was looking for something new. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It just doesn't provide them because he knows what he's saying is a fraud. You just have to take his word for it. And how are you going to go research that in the 50s and 60s? I mean, the best you could hope for was something in the library. Yeah. It's infuriating to see a text people will feel is authoritative and to know he doesn't attempt to substantiate anything. That infuriating part of pseudoscience. And that, I'm right there with you. That is what angers me, is he's taking people at their weakest and saying, oh, I'm going to help you, and does the opposite, the complete opposite, and just takes those people that are in a weak state. You know, I'm not saying that as a bad thing, just people in need, and he uses that against them. It's exactly what he did. And then their children and grandchildren were roped in. So, yeah. It's part interesting and part angering. So, let's see, how far are we? All right. Okay. The helpless amazement of police about the confirmed criminal, and the police belief in the criminal type and the criminal mind, come about through this cycle. Police, for some reason or other, like governments, have become identified with society. Take any one of these criminals and clear him, and the society regains a rational being of which it can use all it can get. Keep up the punishment cycle, and the prisons will get more numerous and more full. Well, we already know that too. If you help rehabilitate someone and give them the help that they need, they can become a good citizen. And if you don't, and they get out of prison and they get right back into the same cycle, that's why it makes me mad about Narcanon, because it's not helping a soul. They're taking money, they're putting them, I don't know what they do in there, putting them back out on the street with no help. Everything they do just makes everything worse. The problem of the child lashing back at his parents by negation, and the problem of Jimmy the Cobb blowing a bank guard apart in an armed robbery, stem both from the same mechanism. The child, examined on the conscious level, is not aware of his causes, but will put forth various justifications for his conduct. Jimmy the Cobb, waiting for this also very sentient society to tie him down with straps in an electric chair and give him an electric shock therapy which will cause him to cease and desist forever, examined for his causes, will pour forth justifications to explain his life and conduct. The human mind is a pretty wonderful computing machine. The reasons it can evolve for unreasonable acts have staggered one and all, and particularly social workers. Without knowing the cause and the mechanism, the chances of drawing a correct conclusion by comparing all conducts available are as remote as winning a Fantan. Fantan, a Chinese betting game in which the players lay wagers on the number of pieces that will remain when a hidden pile of them has been divided by 4. That hurt my head. Okay. As remote as winning at Fantan from a Chinese. Hence, the punishments have continued as the muddled answer to a very muddled society. There are 5 ways in which a human being reacts toward a source of danger. These are also the 5 courses he can take on any given problem. And it might be said that this is 5 valued action. The parable of the Black Panther is appropriate here. All right, now I got to go read that. In Dianetics, considerable slang has been developed by patients and Dianeticists, and they call a neglect of the problem the Black Panther mechanism. One supposes this stems from the ridiculousness of biting Black Panthers. What? Okay. So he pretty much means ridiculousness. So Black Panther means ridiculous. I'm going to go with that for now. The parable of the Black Panther is appropriate here. Let us suppose that a particularly black-tempered Black Panther, oh, he's explaining it, is sitting on the stairs, and that a man named Gus is sitting in the living room. Gus wants to go to bed, but there is the Black Panther. The problem is to get upstairs. There are 5 things that Gus can do about this panther. 1, he can go attack the Black Panther. 2, he can run out of the house and flee the Black Panther. 3, he can use the back stairs and avoid the Black Panther. 4, he can neglect the Black Panther. And 5, he can succumb to the Black Panther. Okay. Yes. On other books, this is called Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. So the Black Panther. Okay. I hope I can remember that if he uses it again. These are the 5 mechanisms: attack, flee, avoid, neglect, or succumb. You know, he could have just said that right there without the Black Panther. Attack, flee, avoid, neglect, or succumb. I don't get the neglect part. Is just ignore it? Yeah, I guess. All actions can be seen to fall within these courses, and all actions are visible in life. In the case of a punishment source, the reactive mind can succumb, neglect, avoid, flee, or attack it. The action is dictated by the complexity of engrams and depends upon which one comes into restimulation. The maelstrom of reaction generally resolves itself, however, in one of the 5 courses. If a child is punished and thereafter obeys, he can be considered to have succumbed. And the value of a child who will succumb to punishment is so slight that the Spartans would long since have drowned him. Okay. For it means he has sunk into an apathy, unless it so happens that he himself has computed the idea, bypassing all reaction, that the thing for which he was punished was not right. He can't be assisted in this computation if punishment is entered into the reactive mind by the source trying to assist him. He can flee the punishment source, which at least is not apathy but merely cowardice, by popular judgment. He can neglect the matter entirely and ignore the punishment source, and would have been called a stoic by the ancients, but might be called merely dull-witted by his friends. He can avoid the punishment source, which might give him the doubtful compliment of being sly or cunning or pandering. Or he can attack the punishment source either by direct action or by upsetting or fouling the person or the possessions of the source, in which instance he would be called on direct action a valiant fool, taking parental size into account, or in a less direct fashion he could be called covertly hostile, or could be said to be negating. As long as a human being will attack as a response to a valid threat, he can be said to be in fair mental condition, normal, and a child is said to be just acting like any normal child. All right. Oh, I need some caffeine. Either punishment in, I'm sorry, start over. Enter punishment into the computation, and it no longer computes. It is entirely different in the case of experience. Life is plenty of painful experience waiting for any human being without other human beings complicating the score. A person who is unblocked in his dynamics, or who has been unblocked by Dianetics, can absorb the most amazing amount of hammering in the business of living. Here, even when the reactive mind receives engrams as a result of some of this experience, the analytical mind can continue to cope with the situation without becoming aberrated in any way. Man is a tough, resilient, competent character. But when the law of affinity begins to be broken, and such a breaking of affinity gets into the reactive bank, human beings as antagonistic sources of non-survival becomes a punishment source. If no contra-survival engrams involving human beings are in the earlier, before 5 years, content of the engram bank, pro-survival engrams are taken as a matter of course and are not severely aberrative. In other words, it is the breaking of affinity with his fellows on an engramic level which most solidly blocks the dynamics. Man's affinity with man is far more a scientific fact than it is a poetic and idyllic idea. Before 5 years, what survival instincts are you supposed to have before 5 years old? Just curious. I mean, just don't fall down. Don't trip over the ball. I mean, I hope that's all. The cycle then of life, which will be normal, current average state, or psychotic, is an easy thing to draw. It begins with a large number of engrams before birth. It gathers more in the dependent and rather helpless condition post-birth. Punishment of various kinds entering now as locks, key in the engrams. New engrams, which will involve the earlier ones, enter. New locks accumulate. Illness and aberrative action set in most certainly by the age of 40 or 50, and death ensues sometimes afterward. He's saying illness and aberrated action set in by age 40 or 50. I honestly haven't, myself, I'm 55, haven't changed that much in those years. So I think for the most, well, I guess if you had life experiences later in life. Yep. He thinks he's interesting. That's the sad part. Yeah, some of this is just, he could have gotten these points across so much easier. That's why they had to have Dianetics centers and classes and workbooks to get through this. Somebody had to tell you what you were reading. We don't have that. I'm going to do that today. I got to write it down because I always forget. I want to go back on eBay. I had seen, as I was just scrolling, I had seen a workbook and I had seen DVDs of the course. I don't know if I'm going to do the DVDs. We'll see. If they're cheap, maybe I will. Just to help me help you guys. Sometimes I get through half a page and I don't realize what we just read. All right. So, short of the optimum solution of clearing the engrams, there are several things which can be done about aberration and psychosomatic ills. That these methods are uncertain and of only limited value does not mean that they will not occasionally meet with some astonishingly beneficial responses. Such methods can be classified under the headings of environmental change, education, and physical treatment. Kind of like what we do now instead of Dianetics. If you can change your environment for the better, you can get education, and your physical treatment can get better. So, some methods can be classified. Hold on. I already said that. Physical treatment. Taking factors out of the environment of an aberree, or taking the aberree out of the environment in which he is unhappy or ineffective, can bring about some astonishingly swift recoveries. This is valid therapy. I'm amazed he put that in the book. Really. Because that's what normal people do. Not normal. Most people. I don't mean normal. I mean most people. It removes the restimulators from the individual or takes the individual away from the restimulators. It is ordinarily quite hit or miss. Not really. And more miss than hit. And it will not remove all the restimulators by 9/10, since the individual himself carries the bulk of these around with him or is compelled to contact them. One is reminded of a case which had severe asthma. He had received it in a very severe birth engram. His frantic parents carried him to every mountain asthma resort suggested and spent tens of thousands of dollars in these jauntings. When this patient was cleared and the engram refiled, it was discovered that the restimulator for his asthma was clean, cold air. So clean, cold air was actually causing his asthma because that was the restimulator. The only certainty in the environment approach is that a sickly child will recover when removed from restimulative parents and taken where he is loved and feels safe. For his sickness is the inevitable result of restimulation of prenatal engrams by one or the other or both parents. Somewhere along the line, there is probably a husband or wife who has descended chronically into the first two zones after marriage, after having married pseudo mother or pseudo father or pseudo. Does it? So he's pretty much blaming parents for all of their child's psychosomatic ills. Isn't that nice? Everything wrong with you is your parents' fault before you were born. Now, technically, that is my problem, but a lot of us had abusive childhoods. In the educational field, new data or enthusiasms may very well key out engrams by overbalancing the reactive mind in the light of a new analytical surge. If a man can simply be convinced he has been fighting shadows, or if he can be persuaded to hang his fears on some indicated cause, whether that cause is true or not, he can be benefited. Sometimes he can be educated into a strong faith in some deity or cult, which will cause him to feel so invulnerable that he rises above his engrams. Raising his survival potential in any way will raise his general tone to a point where it is no longer on a par with the reactive bank. So I see that because that happened when my family went to church. You know, things, you learn how to be happier, you learn how to be a better person, so you can overcome, bad things that have happened in your life. I mean, I can see that. Where was I? Giving him an education in engineering or music where he can receive a higher level of respect will often defend him from his restimulators. A rise to a position of esteem is actually a change of environment, but it is also educational since he is now taught he is valuable. If a man can be made busy at a hobby or work by personal or exterior education, that it is good for him, another mechanism comes into being. The analytical mind becomes so engrossed that it takes to itself more and more energy for its activity and begins to align with a new purpose. Physical treatment resulting in improved physical condition will bring about hope or change a man's reactions by shifting him on his time track. It may key out engrams. You think? These methods are valid therapy. They are also in reverse. The things which cause aberrations to manifest themselves. There are wrong ways to act and wrong things to do and wrong ways to treat men, which in the light of what we know now are criminal. Yeah, he's trying to downplay therapy. Thrusting a man into an environment which restimulates him and making him stay there is a slice of murder. You think? Maybe like, I don't know, the Sea Org? Making him keep an associate who is restimulative is bad. Making a man or a woman stay with a marriage partner who is restimulative is unworkable. More is unworkable mores unless Dianetic therapy is used. Making a child. So if you use Dianetic therapy, you have to stay with the marriage partner that's abusive. That doesn't make sense there. Making a child stay in a home where he is restimulated is most certainly inhibitive, not only of his happiness, but of his mental and physical development. A child should have many more rights about such things, more places to go. You would think. Yeah, I mean, you go through all of this, right? You have engrams, you have this, you have that, you have the reactive mind, and then you find out, no, all along it's these body thetans that's been attacking you, making you sick. It completely does a 180 into something else. Uh, Sounds like he is blaming his illness on prenatal incidents. Is it an unintentional biography? Just gross. Or his childhood? It really doesn't say much about his parents or what they were like. I haven't found anything that said that. But it's very possibly because his dad was, I don't think the whole time. It was later, after he was born, I think he went active duty in the Navy. I think. So, yeah, he could have been in that very type of childhood. He did, I'm going to go into that in a different video. He had a lot of illnesses all his life. He had asthma. He had eye problems. Uh, there was some other things. So I think what you just said is true. He's trying to blame his illnesses on other people, not his fault. Okay, we're almost done. Where were we? Here, this part about a child uh, should have many more rights about such things and more places to go. Yet he created a horrible environment for children in Scientology. Pretty much. An obsolete system or a made up system. On a physical therapy level, anything as violent as surgery or exodontistry in the psychosomatic plane is utter barbarism in the light of Dianetics. Toothache is normally psychosomatic. I 100% disagree with that. toothache is psychosomatic. So what? You cause yourself to have a cavity with your brain? I wish I had that much power. Organic illnesses enough to fill several catalogs are psychosomatic. No recourse to surgery of any kind should be had until it is certain that the ailment is not psychosomatic or that the illness will not diminish by itself if the potency of the reactive mind is reduced. Right there is why so many Scientologists die. Right there. Because before you see a doctor, before you have surgery, before you have treatment, you have to get cleared first. You have to make sure it's not psychosomatic. That right there is why so many OT8s are dying of cancer, because they think that they can clear it through Scientology. And then it gets so bad that then there's nothing that can be done there in stage 4. That's it right there, and started in the first book. That guy's thinking is just ruinous. Mental physical therapy is too ridiculous, with the source of aberration now a science, to be seriously mentioned. For no thinking doctor or psychiatrist possessed of this information would touch another electrode for electric shock therapy, or even glance at a scalpel or ice pick to perform an operation on the prefrontal lobes of the brain, unless that doctor or psychiatrist is himself so thoroughly aberrated that the act springs not from any desire to heal, but from the most utter and craven sadism to which engrams can bring a man. That's it. Sadism. Oh, by the way, his mental illness, when I finally did figure out where it went, sadism was part of it. He's got this is all what he just wrote. So I'm going to see what he says there. Sadism, enjoyment of inflicting or watching cruelty. And it said that he had, like I said, I'm going to do another short video on all of his physical illnesses, his mental illnesses that he possibly had or did have. John Atack, if you have Amazon Prime, he was a Scientologist that has written several books. He's like the oh my God, the word just went right out of my brain. Anyway, I know the word. It's right there. When you know something in and out 100%. I do this all day long with my husband. We play word games because I can't remember stuff. Anyway, he knows all about LRH. He knows all about the black magic. That's where I got a lot of this from. And there's a couple of his books that are free to read. I don't know if Kindle Unlimited is part of Amazon Prime or if I pay more for that. I can't remember. Wrote. Yeah. Anyway, I got a lot of interesting facts. There's an interview that he did with Andrew Gold. I only took parts of it for my video because I didn't want my video to be an hour long. You must go watch the whole thing. There's so much more involved in even just like his black magic, and so much more. I took what I could to keep it under 15 minutes. But I'm not going to read this other paragraph. It's about prefrontal lobe lobotomies. We kind of already know what that is. So he's mainly talking about surgery for the brain, but you can take that to mean surgery for any illness that you're not supposed to have surgery or any kind of treatment. And we know through Reese, because she was a dental technician or assistant or something in her father-in-law's dental practice, I think, or her dad. Anyway, she knew about dentistry. I'm not sure if she did it, but she knew Scientologists that would not do anything, take any of the gas or go to sleep for a dental procedure. Some wouldn't even use Novocaine. But some only use Novocaine when somebody like me would be like, knock me out. I don't want to be here for this. So I had my 4 wisdom teeth cut out and I had to be put under. You can get a lot of John's essays for free online. Yeah. And his whole first book is also free. And then he's done, it looks like possibly 3 interviews with Andrew Gold. And I'm going to put those all in the description of the video because that's where I got a lot of my information from, him and his book. And I just pared it down to different parts. I don't want to have a big long video. So I did one on him and black magic. We already did one on how he created Dianetics and how that turned into Scientology. Then I'm going to do one on his mental and physical illnesses. And depending on how long that is, I may incorporate I didn't do his whole history, like before Dianetics, his childhood and all of his schooling and his Navy career. I'll probably do a separate video for. Okay, Susan. But yeah, I've heard John Atac's name before, but I didn't really know like who he was and how much he had written and how involved that he was. I just, I've heard ex-Scientologists say his name. Now I know who he is and how much he knows. And and I'm doing a video on Charles Manson. We all thought he got into Scientology in prison. Not the case. He actually, let me switch. My screen is a blur with those glasses. Oh, I can see now. We're done with the book, so I'm just chatting. So if you need to go, you can go. Charles Manson got into Scientology well before he was in prison and actually used some of it with the family. So I don't know if he was in it before he did the murders or they did the murders. I think it's possible, and that he never stopped using Scientology. So that's going to be an interesting video. That was surprising. And then whatever else, I still want to do one on, although I don't know if I can. There's going to be a lot. I mean, it took me several hours yesterday just to get all of my notes together to make an 11-minute video. Oh, Lana, no problem. It's helping me a lot too. Cricket, I think, found the book online somewhere. It might also, I don't know if that book's been put into ChatGPT yet, if you think you need to read along. I know me, whenever like Aaron has documents, I like to read along. It helps me remember more than just hearing it. But if you have that Cricket, if you can put it in the comments after, or I'll go find it. I found a bunch in the Wayback Machine. But I found it on my phone, but for some reason I can't find the same thing on Google on my computer. It's so weird. Wilcom S. Burroughs was in Scientology for a time too. I think I remember hearing that name. John Atack may have mentioned him. Check this out. This is in the video. I'll bring it up real quick. Hold on just a second. See if I can find it again. And it was really cool. Like I said, we're just chatting right now, so I hope I can find it again. Let's see. Was it under... Yeah, Scientology and the Occult on Wikipedia. And this. Hold on. I don't know why my computer is running slow. I didn't shut it down last night. Okay, here we go. Check this out. Can you guys see that? Let's see if we can get rid of me. All right. So these are his influences. Now, I know a lot about the influences at the top, not a lot about the ones at the bottom. So you have Masonry, which I believe is the Masons, the Freemasons. Golden Dawn, I talk about that in my video. Rosicrucianism, Crowley, I have that in my video. Hypnosis, Freud, Thompson and White, Freud. This guy, I can never say his name. Korzybski, I don't know. Van Gogh, Heinlein. Then you go into space opera, saucer culture, scouting, acting, sci-fi, U.S. Navy. Those were all influences before Dianetics and Scientology. And then you have the stuff at the bottom, which is after, I guess. The only ones I recognize, obviously, are Miscavige and Rainier. And Rainier of Nexium, Korzybski. Thank you. I've tried to say that so many times. Korzybski. Thank you. Hi, Craig. I can see clearly now the rain is gone. Yeah. So, and he started reading Aleister Crowley at age 16. Because they only touch on things when they're talking about his history sometimes. And all I had heard about up to this point was, he became friends with Jack Parsons in 1945 on convalescence from the Navy. Come to find out, no, he started reading Aleister Crowley when he was 16. So there's more. So like I said, I'm going to try to put that. I haven't figured out, I recorded it on StreamYard, and I haven't figured out how to move it over to YouTube yet. That's all I got to figure out. And then I can attach the videos to that. So I may just have to download it to my computer, and then upload it to YouTube. No, never mind. Yeah, I knew you meant William. Yeah, I know. Autocorrect and bad thumbs is why I can never talk right. It actually got very interesting, and I had to pare it down because I didn't want to do a documentary. Those have been done, and there's other people doing those. And it was all in the interview with Andrew Gold. So if you want more of it, I made the short version for, like I said in the beginning of this video. I'm trying to make these little less than 15 minutes videos for people that are new to Scientology, the anti-Scientology movement, learning about Scientology, understanding LRH and things about him, that haven't done a deep dive or don't know everything. There was things I found out I didn't know. I thought, we knew enough about him. No, there's more. And you can see it in Scientology. Even the cross is from an influence that he had, which was in the same article as this one. I'll show you the cross that he stole from. So he stole, because I didn't put this in the video. Can you see it? So this is the rose cross of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Scholars speculate the Scientology cross may have been inspired by Aleister Crowley's use of the rose cross, because it's an 8-pointed cross also. The print in the hardcover is a little bigger and easier to read than the paperback. Yeah. I'm doing okay now that I have my bifocals. Before that, I used to have trouble with paperbacks. The words would run together, even with readers. Indigo. Oh, thank you. Organize your books. So, that's cool. Yeah, I'm having fun too. So, like I said, I always wanted to go in high school. I thought I was going to go to college for psychology, but not to treat people. I wanted to go into research. I was interested back then. That was before a lot of true crime was on TV. You know, I'd only seen a few documentaries, and I wanted to go into research, and I wanted to research serial killers, and I wanted to research their brains. Because I had run into somebody by that point that you can look in somebody's eyes and know something is missing. And I met somebody like that. And I wanted to know more about it. So I'm going to go. Thank you guys for being here. It was it's interesting in a train wreck sort of way, learning what LRH truly thought, because we know that what he says he's going to help you with, he's actually going to cause. And that's the sad part. And I hope that maybe there are some under the radar Scientologists or survivors that might run across these videos and maybe see it from our point of view, especially in under the radar, or somebody that's not sure, and hear it from a Never-End's point of view about what he's doing in Scientology, and they might be like, it might be an aha moment. I'm hoping that too. Ben. Yeah, I like the research. I've listened to write my notes. I've literally listened to that John Atak interview like 6 times, and then going back and forth and on high speed trying to make sure I got everything right. That's what took so long yesterday. So now I understand. That was really my first recorded video. So now I understand why YouTubers that do true crime, the work that they put in is amazing. I didn't even have to go look that many places. John Atak pretty much gave me all the information. So it really wasn't that hard. I just had to decide, what I wanted to keep and what you can find out if you watch the interview. So I kept the basics of the black magic part as much as I could. I didn't talk about any more external influences from there. I just tried to keep it, a straight shot from when he was 16 through him writing Dianetics and the black magic is in Scientology. His son Nibs said Scientology is black magic, but done slowly. The black magic that he was in, and the reason a lot of people use a K with it, I didn't misspell it, is it's not spells or tricks, it's ritual magic. And that's different than spell magic and doing spells and incantations. It's rituals. So it's an interesting video. I'm going to try to I will try my best to get it put up today if I can figure it out. So y'all have a good week. I'm going to go ahead and schedule next Sunday's live stream so I don't forget. Like I said, if I hadn't looked up, I would have missed. I'd been late. I was running around for 30 minutes getting ready. So, and then, let's see, this is Sunday. I'm going to try to be out tomorrow. I should be out tomorrow, back on the street. I'm loving the students being back. I didn't realize how dead summer was until they came back. And now it's just wall-to-wall people all the time. So it's been pretty cool. So y'all have a good week if I don't see you before Dianetics next Sunday. And peace out.